Wait a minute.
Sorry about that. Hey. Hello, everybody. This is Lane Nickel, and I'm here with three legendary wrestlers. Tito Santana, who was a 2004 Hall of Fame inductee. Brutus the Barber Beefcake, who's a Hall of Fame inductee in 2019. And WCW legend and NWO member, Buff Bagwell. How you guys doing today?
Great. Fantastic.
My first question is a general question, of course, but I want to start with Tito. How did you get your start in professional wrestling?
Well, I was playing football at West Texas State, and Tully Blanchard joins our team when I was a junior, and I guess I met his dad, and they started talking to me about becoming a professional wrestler, and they planted the seed, and because of Tully Blanchard and Joe Blanchard and Terry Funk, because Terry Funk, I played football at West Texas State University, and Terry Funk also played there, and Dory. As a matter of fact, there's a whole list of guys that played football at West Texas State, wrestled at West Texas State.
Okay, Brutus, same question.
Jeez. My older sister used to take me to the Armory in Tampa to watch wrestling, and I loved it, but never thought about anything about getting involved in being a wrestler. And I started weightlifting in high school and wound up weightlifting with some guys you might have heard of, Terry Bollea, aka Hulk Hogan.
Yeah.
And he's a musician playing a rocking band. I used to go watch his band and go to the beach, hang out, but still, there was no thought on my part about being a wrestler. And Hulk's big ambition was to be a wrestler. All the local wrestlers, Jack Briscoe, Jerry Briscoe, they used to come out to see his band play. He had a hell of a band, and they would always say, "You should be a wrestler," because he was a big guy, not nearly as big as he became, but he wound up going to the school in Tampa, and Eddie Graham didn't really. I don't know. I've heard some conflicting stories, especially out of Jerry Briscoe. Supposedly, he said that Eddie really liked Jerry and they really wanted him, but Hiro Matsuda sprained his ankle, almost broke his leg that first day.
Yeah.
Kind of sounded like they were trying to discourage him a little bit, not encourage him. So he took a few weeks off, came back, finished the school. They weren't giving him bookings. They were going to make him really just suffer for a while. Get one booking a week or two bookings a week in the farthest towns away. There were Miami and Tallahassee. He was like, "Nah, this is not what I signed up for. It's not what I really thought this was going to be." And so he quit. And he recruited his best friends and guys his age. I'm like 3, 4 years younger, and to try to go back and try to break in the business. And nobody wanted any part of it. They were like, they had decent jobs. They were working, so they didn't want to quit to go be a wrestler because it's a pretty tough thing to just jump into without some kind of family name or really being connected to people like Tito, West Texas State. I played football and where everybody was wrestled and well-known school. He had a little leg up there, and so Hogan got desperate. He couldn't find anybody to. I was the kid that hung around. They they would leave me. They'd say, "We're going to meet at the beach at 9," but they'd show up at 8 and leave. And so when I got there at 8:45, nobody's there. They're all at the beach laughing. Fucking kid,
Yeah.
that dumb kid. But the dumb kid was the only one who said, when Hogan says, nobody would had the guts to stand up and say, "Yeah, I'll try, I'll do it," except for me.
Yeah.
And we went to Cocoa Beach, where there used to be a bar right on the beach. The guy that owned it, his name was Whitey Bridges. Whitey told Terry, if you ever wanted to do something, that he could come to Cocoa Beach, and Whitey said he'll help help make it happen in the gym or something like that. So went to see Whitey. Whitey put us to work in the bar so we could make some money. Got an apartment. We built our own gym, bought steel and weight bars, and made our own dumbbells, made our own leg machines, squat racks, made everything, and spent 14 months training twice a day, 6 days a week. Took one day off,
Yeah.
and both of us I went from 180 maybe to about 250. It's about 75, 70 pounds. Also went from like 260 to 320. And and so we by the time we got done, we were trained. We were monsters. We didn't touch a drop of alcohol or anything for that whole time. We were just strictly training twice a day like animals.
Yeah.
And we went to see a guy in Atlanta. Buff knew pretty well, Jim Barnett.
Yeah.
Oh, Jimbo.
We went to see Jimbo and in person. And Jimbo took one look at us and was dancing around in the place, going, "Oh my God, oh my God, this this is going to be great. This is going to be great." And they were just dollar signs. They two big blonde headed, gigantic guys. They know how to work. I didn't know how to work, but
That didn't
I was
matter.
willing to learn.
Yeah.
And and next thing you know, they sent us out. We worked together a little while, and then they split us up. It was the best thing. It helped me get on my own and get experience. And then next thing you know, there we go, off into the stratosphere.
Right. Okay, Buff.
Same question.
Yes.
I say, 1988, my parents go broke, which was going to be the family business. They owned a company called Southeastern Building Supply, it was a lumber business. So I got into massage therapy. I became a licensed massage therapist, just trying to make some kind of something happen. And in the middle of finding out that wasn't going to happen, Missy Hyatt saw me at the swimming pool in Kennesaw, Georgia, and she's like, "Won't you be a wrestler?" And I said, "A what?" She goes, "A pro wrestler." And I said, "Those guys don't make any money." And she said, "Our lowest paid guy makes about $100,000 a year." And I said, "Tell me more." So she kept telling me a little bit more about it, but um, so she sends me down to the wrestling school. It wasn't a school yet at WCW. It was a warehouse, an old, broken down warehouse with a broken down ring in south of Atlanta in Griffin, Georgia. And Jody Hamilton and Sergeant Buddy Lee Parker were running this, what they called a WCW school, but it didn't have a name and nobody really knew about it much. I walk into this dump of a place, and Sergeant Buddy Lee Parker, if you don't know him, he's an asshole. He's really rough. But we're friends now. But when you don't know him, he was very rough. And he said, "You're not big enough." And I said, "Well, I was 19 years old, and I was 220 at 19." And I said, "What? Not big enough?" I said, "I'm bigger than Brian Pillman." And he goes, "Brian Pillman can wrestle." I said, "How do you know I can't wrestle?" And when I said that, he looked up at me and he said, "Well, it's $3,000." I said, $3,000? I said, "For this place?" And he goes, "Yeah." And I look over, and this big guy that I know, me and Kevin Nash know each other more than anybody else in this business. In other words, me and Kevin have known each other the longest. Um, because I mean, him for me and me for him, because he was a big time bouncer in Atlanta. He's 10 years older than me, so at 7 foot 350, he was a something to look at. So he was the number one bouncer in Atlanta at every hot club, and I was the patron at every hot club. So me and Kevin became friends, but he was at that school that day in the ring, and I knew Kevin, so I was like, "Oh man, he's trying to make it." Well, he was trying to make it at WCW, while I was trying to make it in the business, period.
Right.
But we had something to talk about at the club, so we became friends, and he made it as Master Blaster, and then he saw me make it as Fabian. But so I finally came back to Missy. I said, "Missy, I ain't got $3,000." She goes, well, let me find somebody else. So she found an independent guy named Steve the Brawler Lawler that trained me for $1,500. And we went, I'd love to say the 14 weeks or 14 months, 2 times a day. The truth is, for about a week, and it seemed like 10 years. But for about a week, we would set the ring up, work in it, and tear the ring down. Like 3 or 4 days a week, we did that for a couple of weeks.
Yeah.
And after that, and after the very first night I went, I quit. And I said, I'm not going back. And then my girl's like, what do you mean? You can do everything. You're boxing champion, you football, baseball. What do you mean? I said, baby, this is different. I've never done anything like this. I said, I'm not going back. And then for some reason, I kept going back. But again, being a wrestler wasn't even an option in my life. We loved pro wrestling, watching it as kids. But being a pro wrestler was never even an idea in my head. But I learned to love it. I got good at it fairly quick. And the guy that beat me up for 2 weeks finally said, I think you got this. And so they threw me on TV instantly. So I looked really bad for a whole year on TV. And then I got pretty good at it finally. And then WCW gave me a shot in 91.
My next question is about the nicknames they had over your career. I want to start with you, Brutus. How did you get the name the Barber?
When I started with WWE in late '83, I'd been already wrestling for 7 years, basically, all over the country. I've been in every territory, different names, this and that, except for Texas. The only place I didn't work was for Bonaires. And came in to New York. I actually got a shot in Austria to wrestle a guy named Otto Vance. You remember Otto, right?
Yeah.
And he was huge. He was the
Wasn't he actually from Germany?
yeah. He was the champion over there. He was the mayor of Graz, and it kind of was like a little tryout from Vince giving me a chance to show what I had. And so I went over there, and everybody warmed and said, "Oh, big Otto, he was 400, 450 pounds, but he's only about what, 6'1" maybe."
Yeah.
I mean, he was really just a monster of a man, and they want to see that. Otto likes to. He's real stiff, and he won't. He likes to. And he was really winding down. This might have been one of the last matches he ever had. He hadn't had a match since the last year. Once a year, at the finale of this tournament, he had a match. Slaughter, usually Bill Eadie, was always the biggest guy they could find. It was supposed to be John Studd, but John Studd was wrestling Hogan, so Vince didn't want to send him. So they sent me. I was the littlest guy they ever sent. 6'4", 255. That's the smallest guy they ever sent. And everybody thought, oh, this is not going to be good. It's going to be terrible. And then I've trained at the gym in Graz, where Arnold Schwarzenegger grew up, where he trained. And so we went, day of, we got there. Otto's thing was called the steamroller. He'd do like a little somersault over you, and that was his finish. And they had rounds. You had it's a little different, like boxing rounds. And so we're wrestling. Otto calls. Everybody tries to slam him, usually, and nobody can ever pick him up. He's so big. He calls for the slam, and I got down and picked him up and slammed him. The whole place went silent. It turns out the littlest guy that ever wrestled him was the only guy who ever slammed him. The people, they went out of their minds. Otto, his back went out when he could barely, he got up and he was staggering around. And next thing you know, we were supposed to go about 4 or 5 more rounds. He's supposed to do his finish on me and all this stuff. Next thing you know, we're down in the thing, and he says, "We're going home," and he hooks me like a cradle, something like a small package. Yeah. And the referee counts 1, 2, 3. They roll him out of the ring onto a stretcher, put him in an ambulance and take him to the hospital where they checked him out. They just, his back was out. They had somebody bring it, and then they brought him back. There wasn't even TV in Graz, in all over there. There was no TV. Everything was done by press, by newspaper. And the people of Graz, and he was there, and all his people and everything, and they were just, they came to me and they said, that was the greatest match we've ever seen Otto have, ever. You know, and I was the biggest underdog that ever wrestled him, and I did all the press. I'd been doing the press for a week before, and then it turns out Otto calls Vince and said, if you don't give that kid a job, then you're a dumbass. Yeah. See you later. And so I went back to the States, met with Vince, and then they gave me the opportunity to cook up my own. They came up with the name Brutus Beefcake. Vince's wife liked the name Beefcake, so that was the shoe-in part. Yeah. And then it was up to Hogan threw it out there. Well, Brutus and Popeye. And okay, Brutus Beefcake. I thought, this is the worst day of my life. I'm going to be in New York, the mecca of world of wrestling in the world. You wrestle in Madison Square Gardens, you've made it. You're world class. That's where you. And I said, now I'm going to make my world class debut in New York City with a name like Brutus Beefcake. Everybody's going to laugh at me, and it's going to be terrible. I was like, but I didn't realize at the time was, if your name was Joe Blow or Jack Smith or Steve Young or anything like that, nobody's ever going to remember your name. But when your name's Brutus Beefcake and you come out, everybody looks like, what? Who is this? What's that? And so it was a gift, and I got the clothes, some real crazy clothes this rock and roller made me, and Brutus Beefcake was out running. Pat Patterson wanted me to be from San Francisco and be flaming gay guy.
Wonder why.
And I had made in my mind that just wasn't something I could do, and so I went the other direction, like a Chippendale. So in WrestleMania 3, they split Greg and I up. We'd been the tag team champions, and Patterson, they gave me no warning, nothing. After the first TV after WrestleMania 3, I show up and they say, come on, we got to go to this barber shop in town. Here, go to the barber shop. Okay, hands me this white coat with a little pocket protector with a pair of scissors and a comb in it, and goes, now you're the barber. What? What do you mean? What do you mean now I'm the barber? Brutus Beefcake, 3 years, Brutus Beefcake's on fire. It sold out everywhere we went. Every night, didn't matter. And now you want to change it? And what's a barber? What am I going to do? What's the deal? I had no game plan. It was basically set me up to fail. Pat was pissed. I didn't do his gay gimmick. I went completely the opposite direction with the Chippendales thing. Yeah. And they just set me up to fail because there was nothing as a barber. What can you possibly do? And I got to give credit where credit's due. Hogan, I went nuts. I came back to the War Memorial in New York, Rochester, New York, and went crazy. And everybody said, "You better go find Beefcake. He's going crazy." And he come in. I said, "That's it. I quit. I'm done with this. It's bullshit. You can't just change my gimmick midstream here for no reason and not tell me, and with no game plan." So what am I gonna do as a barber in the business? And he was right there on it. He says, I got an idea. What about if you use a sleeper hold like Roddy Piper did? It had, great. When Roddy got the sleeper, man, that was, use a sleeper hold, put people to sleep, and then you go pull out your scissors and you cut their hair. And I was like, man, that could work, but it can only work if it happens every single match I'm on TV. If I go on TV, if you go on TV for a couple of weeks in TV and you cut somebody's hair, then you stop. Right. Next thing you know, it's done. Yeah. Nobody's going to talk about it. It's you're finished. Take a hike.
It's like you're finished, right?
so that yes, and so the idea of the haircut thing, the people loved it.
Yeah.
So even though I was like supposed to be a baby face, I was more of almost like a heel baby face thing because I'm really mean cutting these
Yeah.
cutting guys' hair. I'm shaving the middle out of their head, shaving the sides off, giving them reverse mohawks. And the crazier I got, the more the people went crazy. And I remember coming out to the ring with those scissors. I'm looking up and it's like 30,000 people and everybody. And I got these little scissors and I'm going, this is ridiculous. It looks like I got my fingers. It doesn't mean anything.
That's why you had the hedge clippers.
So I came up with the idea, wrapped the hedge clippers like barber poles, walked out with the things out of the curtain, and started chop, chop, chop with the biggest, and the people loved it. And it was just up to me how creative I could get, what ideas I could come up with, what putting things on, cutting hair, showing a mirror to them, getting colored hairspray, painting B all over
Yeah.
their bodies and stuff. And the sicker I got with crazy ideas, the more the people got with it, and it just wouldn't stop ballooning and growing. And it turned out to be an amazing ride, a fun character to just do anything I wanted to do.
Yeah.
And there was a lot of heat from some guys didn't like getting their hair cut, and sometimes it was very very tricky ground to navigate, but the guys were great and everybody was cool, and and then there was the barber that never been one before, and I'm pretty safe to say I don't think there's going to be anybody else doing it.
Right. Okay. Buff.
Sorry, it takes
It's okay.
No,
Buff.
it's great, matter of fact, fantastic story.
Yeah.
And I won't get on my next podcast.
Anyway.
I never heard the gym story where y'all built the own gym, and I didn't know any of that, brother. That's incredible. So I came Dusty Rhodes, actually Magnum TA rang my phone one day, and again, wrestling wasn't, for the last 10 years or so, it hadn't even been in my life. Watched it on TV as a kid, but so this Magnum TA name guy calls me up on the phone and says, "Hey, is Marcus Bagwell there?" And I said, "This is him." I said, "Who is this?" He goes, "It's Magnum T." I said, "It's Magnum." And I said, "Magnum who?" And he went, "It's Magnum." And even with his voice changing, I realized I should know who this is. And I did remember hearing that name before. And I wasn't a huge fan and all that, but oh my God, yes, sir, Mr. Magnum. Yeah. He goes, "Dusty Rhodes wants an appointment with you." And then I said, "Fantastic." So I go down, put a suit on. I'm 20 years old. So it's 1990. WCW was at the South Tower and the CN in the center in Atlanta, Georgia. And I walk in and sit down with Dusty, and he wouldn't quit talking about my teeth. He just said, "You got the best teeth I've ever seen. Your smile's so pretty," and he said, "Like, it's so pretty." I said, "Well, thanks, man. I appreciate it, but does that mean I got a job or what?" "I want you to finish out with Global." And I said, "Man, Global's done, bro. Just hire me, man." And so they hired me to a $500 a week going to school. And in 1990, $500 guaranteed a week was a lot of money, and with a chance to make it, for me, as just barely just turning 20. So they put me in the wrestling school, but they wanted to name me Marcus. My real name is Marcus Alexander Bagwell. Well, for the last 18 years, I didn't go by Marcus. My name was Mark. My name was Mark Bagwell. My real legal name, though, was Marcus.
Right.
So I only got called Marcus when I was in trouble. So I said, "Dusty, that name sucks. I don't want to do that. Please don't go by my." I mean, in 1990, everybody had a gimmick. It was Brutus the Barber, Beefcake. It was the Matador. It was whatever. We were something else, which made it cool. And not Ric Flair. There was very little of those guys that had their real names that were getting over.
Right.
You needed a gimmick. But Dusty he said, "No, I want you to be the rookie. You're gonna be the young, pretty kid that from Sprayberry High School, Marietta, Georgia." I said, "That's horrible, Dusty." He went with it. So the very first match I had, They said, and the winner of the match is Mark Alexander Bagwell. And I was like, so I go to Dusty and go, Dusty, if you're gonna call me by my name, call me by my real name. It sounds better at least.
Mhm.
And when I told him it was Marcus, he ripped his headset off and goes, "That's so much better." And I was like, "Oh my god!" So Marcus Alexander Bagwell is what it was for 5 years, and then when the NWO happened, I I felt like it was a chance for me to do what I always wanted to do and be a character,
Right.
have a name. And so we were on a plane ride home from Seattle, Washington, in first class. I remember it was in first class because it was real dark. There's only like six rows of seats in first, and me and Lex were talking about my name and what we could come up with. And I can't remember what we were coming up with, but it wasn't very long into it. And we heard a voice in the back of first class say, "What about Buff?" And we just stopped. It was like, we looked, and it was Nick Patrick. So Nick Patrick is who named me. He said, "What about Buff?" And me and
The
Lex
referee,
went,
right?
the
Yeah.
referee. He said, me and Lex went, "Buff Bagwell. That's perfect." So instantly it was perfect. We liked it. So Nick Patrick and Lex and me came up with Marcus, but they wouldn't drop Marcus. They would not do it. So I was Marcus Buff Bagwell from that point on.
Okay, and since you mentioned El Matador, how did you get that moniker, Tito?
How did I get El Matador?
Yeah.
Well, I went in uh, to give Vince my notice because, you know, they either used you, they brought you up and they used you, and then they started beating you and use you, beat you, and they weren't doing anything with me. And I just been on the road for so long. I went in there to give him my notice, and I said, Vince, because Vince always, who was the guy that was a director for when we did the song for. There was the guy, movie star. I mean, he worked with Hollywood.
Rick Derringer? No,
No,
Steve Wolf
no,
with Cindy Lauper thing?
no. He was a director. I mean, he directed the whole thing. Anyway, uh, he had mentioned to me that I could be Zorro. He wanted to give me the gimmick of Zorro, and Vince came up with the. He says, "Would you be willing to go to Mexico and train how to be a bullfighter?" And I said, "Yeah." I said, "If you're gonna push me, I'll do it. I'll do whatever you want." I said, "But I'm not. I'm just. I'm not done just breaking even on the road because we were working like dogs." So sure, he sent me to uh, Tijuana, right outside of San Diego, and I was over there. We rented the arena for a couple of weeks, and he had some, real guys that trained matadors, and I got some training on how to become a matador. And I trained with some little bulls. I didn't want any big bulls. And then they had a parade, and then I was supposed to be coming out with a big feud with the $1 Million Man, Ted DiBiase. We were supposed to have a big feud.
Yeah.
Ted went to Mexico supposedly and did some interviews at, like a real beaten down home, poor Mexicans.
Yeah.
This is where Tito came from, and how the heels used to insult the baby faces, and uh, you know, I did some vignettes coming back, training for this, and all of a sudden I come back and there's no more feud with me and the $1 Million Man. They ex that, and because I think at that point, from what I hear, they were thinking about putting the belt on me. And as a matter of fact, in '92, I beat right around that time. I beat the Undertaker in Barcelona, Spain,
Yeah.
and you know, I keep hearing little rumors that they're going to put the belt on me. And you know, when you beat the Undertaker, there's a good chance that they got plans for
Something's
you.
going on.
Something's going on. But the difference, I believe, that the difference in the peso, because Pat Patterson would tell me, we're going to Mexico, we're going to South America, we're going to Central America, we're going to Spain. When they realized how low the peso was, in comparison to the American dollar, they weren't going to be bringing, a lot of money, from Mexico and South America and Central America. And they axed that idea, and that's when they went. They gave the gimmick. And George the Animal Steel ended up working with the $1 Million Man. I was out. We were in Canada, and they were having a meeting, and we're having a meeting, having a meeting. Pat Patterson comes out, and he tells me, Tito, the reason that meeting took so long, bullshit, right? He says because it was between you and Bret Hart, and they decided to go with Bret Hart, to put the belt on Bret Hart. So a few minutes later, Teddy comes and DiBiase comes and talks to me. He says, "Yeah, I almost got the belt. Pat came and told me the reason the meeting was so long was because it was between you and Brett." So he told several, bullshit.
Yeah, everybody.
Everybody, that's the nature of our business. But that's how I became a matador. I thought I did a pretty decent job with El Matador. I mean, what can you do with El Matador? But I would have liked it if they would have pushed it. But all of a sudden, I'm doing jobs, and before I gave them my notices for good and just left.
Yeah.
In '93, I was tired of being on the road. We used to work like dogs. I mean,
We were working
350
300
days.
plus,
Yeah.
350 days. And double shots on weekends,
Yep.
4 TVs, 8 TVs every two
Every
weeks?
3 weeks.
Every 3 weeks.
Yeah.
8 TV.
So you could work in 2 days. You could work 4 times. And
In
then
a week,
work
we
at
would work
night.
15 times in a week.
Yeah.
And now, since you were talking about title belts, this might be my last question, depending on time. But what was the first title you won in any promotion that you were in?
Wow, that's a tough one. I'm not even sure, but I think I was in a company called North Georgia Championship Wrestling. My character was the Fabulous Fabian, and and I'd won. It wasn't the world belt for them. It was something like I think it was the U.S. Championship. So that was the first belt I won in my career. First major belt I won at WCW was the World Tag Team belt.
Same question.
The first major belt that I won in 1979 was the tag team champions with Ivan Putskis.
And then, how about you, Brutus?
I won. Ken Lucas is my partner, the Southeastern, in Pensacola, Florida, the Southeastern Tag Team Champions. And I was 20 years old or something.
That'll be it, guys. I'd like to thank you guys for coming in, taking time out of your busy schedule to be interviewed by me. And they'll be back here tonight for more meet and greets with fans of wrestling.